That wasn't planned, by the way. Cough, cough.
I could do that. Now being 7:30, it's time for the January 23rd meeting of the Board of Assessment Commissioners to come to order. If the clerk could please call the roll.
Mr. Brett?
Yes.
Mr. Pratt? Mr. Jackal? Mrs. Talbert? Mr. Woodard? This meeting was advertised in the Daily Record and the Star Ledger on January 14th, 2020. Notice was posted on the official bulletin boards of Rockaway Township.
First item on the agenda is the approval of the minutes of our last meeting here. The only thing I noticed on there, and it's purely because people like to read things like OPMA in there, do we need a statement in the minutes that this meeting was advertised the way we do in the council meeting? And I didn't see that in the, did I miss that in the draft? Okay. That's the only thing I saw on the minutes from the last meeting.
Mr. Chairman, for your approval, I'd suggest a motion to amend the minutes following the conclusion of this meeting to direct the clerk to insert that statement.
If the clerk heard that motion, I'd be happy to if someone would make it and second it. All those in favor? Motion carried. Next item on our agenda is the introduction of documents.
Mr. Chairman, before we do that, I'd just like the clerk to call the roll again. And for when your name is called, I'd like each member and alternate to confirm that they have complied with the statutory mandate of being provided with or having taken the tour of the properties affected by the sewer line, or perhaps more appropriately, the tour of the sewer line. Chrissy, would you please call the roll again?
Mr. Brett?
Yes, I did.
Mr. Pratt?
Yes, I did.
Mr. Jackal?
I took the tour.
Mrs. Talbert?
I took the tour.
Mr. Woodard?
To drive us around the Bowlbyville section. We thoroughly enjoyed ourselves. We didn't have time to stop for breakfast or lunch, but we made it back in one piece. The short answer is yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, what I plan to do next, just so they're confirmed for the record, is to go through most of the documents that will be considered in evidence before this commission, with some exceptions, but this way we can just confirm the documents. These documents, as you know, have all been provided to the members and alternates previously, but I'd like to identify the documents in the order that they were provided to the members and alternates of the commission. And as to each document, I'll invite Mr. Burek, our tax assessor, to provide a brief explanation. And just in case I'm going to call on Mr. Burek, I would ask the clerk to place him under oath. I can take care of it. I can give oaths. Mr. Burek, do you swear or affirm that your testimony will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I will.
Thank you, sir. Okay, document, and I'm going to mark these documents as we go through them. And, Mr. Chairman, with your approval, I'm gonna mark them C for commission and then in consecutive numbers. So
Works for me.
So the first document will be C1. C1 is a letter from John Dorsey to the mayor and council dated December 30, 1992. And I know, Mr. Burek, do you have a copy of that, Mark?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Mark, would you provide the commission with a brief explanation of what that letter's about?
That basic letter was to the National Guard and the Armory regarding a benefits being deriven, and that even though it is a government installation, that they still do benefit from the sewer line, and that the cost without them contributing would be more exorbitant to those properties that were noticed in the Bowlbyville sewer.
Excuse me, could you just, which page was that on? Was that near the end of the packet, or?
That was at the top of the packet, I believe. That was Exhibit A in the packet you were provided with. December 30, 92.
I don't think we have that.
I know.
Should have been.
If, as we go through these, members of the commission, if anybody is missing something, I'll ask you to make notes as we go along, and then please be in touch with Chrissy, and we'll provide you with anything that might be missing from your packet. Okay.
Oh, the December 30, 92 letter was really dealing with the agreement with Dover more than the other one I was looking at. So it really dealt with the how and if we were to look at the properties that were in Dover as being part of the line, and that was, again, the December 30, 92. Yes. Correct. Correct. Correct.
You picking it up? Okay. Okay, the next item, which was Exhibit B, which I'm gonna mark C2, was Exhibit B in your packets, is a copy of Ordinance 93-5, entitled, "An Ordinance Authorizing the Installation of a Sewer Line on Bowlbyville Road in and for the Township of Rockaway in the County of Morris, New Jersey, appropriating the sum of $1,375,000 therefore, and authorizing the issuance of $1,307,000 assessment bonds or notes of the township to finance part of the cost thereof." And I know that Mark was going to address that ordinance in his testimony tonight. So Mark, now's a good time to do that.
Well, basically, that is the original adoption for the monies to build the sewer project, and they listed at that time 67 properties that could benefit from the installation of the sewer system. That's where our starting point, so to speak, as part of the previous sewer committee or whatever, that's what we look at originally, but then we go into some more detail of looking at the map and the properties and determining whether or not a property does or does not benefit from that sewer line installation. So there could be properties that were not actually there, or when you look at a property, it could have two frontages and therefore could be subdivided. You would want to maybe give it a two sites or what have you, that's what the review of the committee does. But that was the starting point from 1993. That's the original ordinance that we went from.
Christina, do we have a date on when that ordinance was actually introduced or adopted?
Yeah, the copies that we were originally provided with are unexecuted copies, but I'm told they are accurate.
The adoption date I have was February 1, 1994.
Thank you.
Okay, the third item in the packet, which was Exhibit C in the packet, and that I am marking C for Commission 3, is Ordinance 9311. And this was the ordinance authorizing the intermunicipal agreement for sanitary sewer service between the Township of Rockaway and the Town of Dover. And I'll ask Mr. Burek if he has, feels at this time there's any necessary comment on that ordinance.
No, again, but the only thing that I believe that 9311, well, no, 9433 should have been the next ordinance. That ordinance removed two properties from the sewer line stating that they were to connect through Dover. 9311, which was adopted 3293, talked about capping the assessments at $16,000 per property owner and referenced the two properties to be removed from the original 93-5 ordinance.
I'm sorry, how many properties are removed?
Originally, the 93-5 ordinance indicated 67 properties.
And the 11?
And then the 9311, they were referencing two properties that were to be removed, which was block 10905 lot 5 and 10906 lot 6. Were to be removed, they were permitted to connect through Dover.
The next item is Exhibit D, which I'm going to be marking C4. C4 is a copy of the intermunicipal agreement between the Town of Dover and the Township of Rockaway as to sewer lines and charges. Mr. Burek?
That's pretty much self-explanatory, and that was the agreement that was signed between the Town of Dover and Township of Rockaway. I don't know what was discussed or not discussed. There's no minutes or nothing of that nature that I have been able to look at. I take the document at its face value.
Thank you.
That was, I'm sorry, John, that was the January 28th, 93 Dorsey letter to the township, or about the township Dover agreement? January 28th, 93 is what I have on that one.
Excuse me, you're referring to C1, Chairman?
I think your C4, was that the Dorsey letter to?
No, C4 is the intermunicipal agreement itself.
Okay. Okay.
Okay?
Yep.
Next one.
Yes, sorry.
Next thing was Exhibit E in your packet. I'm going to mark this as C5. C5 is a memo from former township engineer Lisa Ryden and, to Lisa Ryden and Charles Wood, the engineer at the time and CFO respectively, from Steve Levinson, business administrator, with respect to sewer assessments, and a request their review of a memorandum from Mark Burek and provide and ask that Mr. Levinson be provided with a projected timetable for the costs associated from the construction of the Richard Mine Road and Boltville sewer lines.
It sounds like a document we didn't originally have, John.
I don't have one.
No,
Okay,
No, I don't.
we'll get you that.
thank you.
Exhibit F is what will prove to be a very important document that we're not going to go into in detail tonight, but I will have Mr. Burek explain it to you. It is the sewer benefit analysis report prepared for the township by Eisenberg Associates, and the date of the valuation report was March 12, 1996. This is going to be marked as C6. And Mark, can you give an intro on that?
Basically, that report was prepared as a draft report for the original sewer committee based upon the ordinance 93.5 and review of the properties, what was felt to have benefited from the sewer assessments. So Mr. Eisenberg and myself, we went through the map. We looked at all the properties. We did the valuation based upon sales before and after, came up with our totals. That was to then be reviewed by the committee and looking at the map and looking at the ordinances and saying, are we capturing all properties? In the past, the way sewer assessments were done was they would take how many properties divided by the cost, and there was the assessment. That's not the statutory requirement. Statutory requirement says you have to do it before and after and do a benefit analysis. And that means even if a property is vacant, you must assess it that it might benefit in the future. Because if you didn't do it that way, when someone eventually wants to build a house and the sewers are in the street, they just pay a tie-in fee. They're not paying the benefit analysis. That was kind of the policy prior to 1994, before I got here and when we started the original sewer assessments. So all the sewer assessments from 94 to current are done on this fashion. A before and after appraisal, what the benefit is, we then divide the total benefits into the total cost to get a ratio to apply to all the assessments. Because you're not supposed to make any money, you're supposed to cover your costs based upon the benefits received. And that's what the report basically does, is from the original ordinances of 93.5, 93.11, those were the properties. There were 60, I believe, 65 properties that are referenced in Mr. Eisenberg's report. Correct.
Now, what I'd like to ask the commission to do, if you haven't done so already, is that at our next meeting, we will get into substantial detail about the Eisenberg report, and if everything goes according to plan, Mr. Burek will be presenting to you, based upon the Eisenberg report in part, and his own work, the actual information that you're going to need to perform your function of determining the appropriate assessment with respect to these properties. So we will go from there, and now we'll go to the next item, which is C7, which is Exhibit G in your packet. This appears to be minutes of what was then called a sewer assessment committee of December 2, 2003. And Mr. Burek, I'll ask if you have anything to, well, actually, we have a series of minutes, excuse me. We have December 3, 2003 minutes. We have any of the minutes?
It's missing from our package.
I'm going to have a hard talk with administration about copying skills. But let me just tell you what we have. We have, and Chrissy, I'll ask you to note this, please, for me. We have a sewer committee meeting dated December 3, 2003. We have a next set of what appear to be minutes dated April 12, 2005. That's, the first one is 1 page, the second is 2 pages. Then, under that same heading, which will be C7 collectively, and I'll probably start marking them C7A, B, C, D, etc. We have a letter from Mr. Eisenberg, the appraiser. Actually, we have a letter to Lou Eisenberg, the appraiser, from Mr. Burek, dated April 13, 2005. And Mark, would you be kind enough to explain to the commission what that letter was about?
Basically, what we had done is previously I had done several different analyses within White Meadow Lake as well as other areas of the town, and we were looking to hire Mr. Eisenberg to assist with doing the appraisals because of licensing. I am a licensed tax assessor, but going to court, having credentials as an SRA or an MAI gives more credence to the analysis, although if we were to be challenged, we would want somebody with those kinds of credentials. So basically, that letter was informing him of, here's the analysis that I have done in the past, to collaborate with me and to create the analysis that is the basis of how we determine the benefits, which is the before and after sales. We use size adjustments, location adjustments, things of that nature.
Thank you, Mark. Next item is a letter again from Mr. Burek to Mr. Eisenberg, dated June 23, 2005. I'll ask Mr. Burek to address that letter.
It was basically, urging him that the administration wanted the lines completed, in dealing with the sewer line number 14, Richard Mine Road, and the Bulbyville reports, in terms of getting our analysis and getting the draft reports all together and done.
And the last item, which was supposed to be under Exhibit G, appears to be a document which is 3 pages, entitled Bulbyville Sewer Line Problems, which has at its top a notation that the Bulbyville sewer line became live as of March 12, 1996. And I'm going to ask Mr. Burek if he can help us with giving some attribution to that document.
Basically, as part of that previous committee, what we did is we looked at the ordinance, we did a site visit, we looked at the lot sizes, we looked at what the properties are, what the makeup of the neighborhood is, and came to issues with certain properties. So I brought forward, for example, we can use, we want to give some credence to an existing septic system. Do we do that across the board? Or, I'll take this one, 109028, new home built in 1998, should have 100% benefits, yes or no? So it never had, at the time the sewer line became live, a septic system or a cesspool or some kind. So do we give it that same discount, or do we say, no, it does not get that discount for an existing system, that it got 100% benefit? Those were the questions that myself or Mr. Buzak or Mr. Eisenberg would have for the commission to make a decision, yes or no. Do we give it an assessment? Do we not? And that gets reflected in that spreadsheet. Even though it might be listed on the spreadsheet, it might have 0 benefit, because it was named on the ordinance, but the lot is too small, or we saw wetlands or something of that nature that said that can never be developed, even if it has sewers. So that were decisions that needed to be made by the commission, so to speak, to guide us. Do you want to give it an assessment? Do you not? From our perspective, Mr. Eisenberg and mine, you tell us what we determine what the benefit was based upon comparable sales. You tell us what properties you want us to assess. That's what we write the report as. And that was kind of my role in the previous. I also did some of the minutes, attended the meetings, tried to, go through this, that we had some documentation of why we looked at what and what was what on the properties. So but we're going to be reinventing that, so to speak, because of this large change in the amount of properties, from the original ordinance to what currently is over there.
And by the way, I'm sure nobody up there is bashful, but during the course of Mr. Burek's explanation, if any members of the commission require questions or clarification, and I see one already.
I was just going to ask a question. So you mentioned that if there is a septic or a cesspool, but we can't have cesspools anymore, so it'd have to be septic. If there was a septic on the property and they had the ability to tie in, there was some type of a discount available?
We felt that, not knowing the condition of everybody's septic over there, that having something that was pre-existing should be given some weight, as opposed to a completely vacant lot that never tied in. You're getting 100% benefit. Even though these properties benefit, in my opinion, greatly by having the sewer system, I think and again, we gave a 5% adjustment, saying you had something existing, we'll reduce your benefit by 5% because you had something. But to go into more detail than that, then I would need a report on, as of the date this line went live, of what was the condition of every septic or cesspool over there.
Follow-up. Is everybody now required to be tied in?
Yes.
I just say, yeah, so you're saying give them a discount based on the fact that they're tying into a septic system
Well, that they
that's
had some-
older than what they would,
But they had something that was technically working. So if you're gonna look at a truly vacant lot and something that has an existing house on it, the cost might not be the same because they already had something that was working. So our thought process was give them that discount, so to speak, off that benefit received because they already had something existing.
So if they just put in a $15,000 septic system,
Right,
They
and
should
now,
receive-
now they're required to tie in, you're not gonna discount them $15,000, but you gotta say, hey, you had something, but down the road, this is much more of a benefit than this, because the system will have to be replaced in 15, 20 years.
so were all the benefits 5% or just a,
All
of
the
thumb?
benefits that were, where something had existing was a 5% adjustment.
just to follow up real quick on something Lisa said, there are no existing septic systems in that entire
There
area.
should not be, no. I believe before Mr. Sheard had left, we had gone through and and I will get you a copy of this, when they technically went on the line and are they connected and are they paying a sewer maintenance? I can get you a copy of that. That was something that hadn't been done between the collector's office, Mr. Sheard's office, of were they collecting a maintenance fee and were they actually tied in?
The next document was Exhibit H, or hopefully was Exhibit H in the packet you got, which is a letter dated June 13, 2004, from then municipal attorney or township attorney Edward J. Buzak to Mr. Burek, referencing the Bow Beagle sewer assessments.
I don't think we have that one either.
Okay. C8, yeah. No, that's one of the things that I've noted too.
Basically, that letter went into detail in 2004 as part of the committee meetings. They felt that 3 properties should be added to the ordinance, which was, the ordinance is 04-26. They wanted to add block 10908 lots 1 and 2 and block 10909 lot 2. Mr. Buzak's letter to me dealt with the legal proceedings in terms of what the boundaries of the commission had. Can properties be added to an existing ordinance, and the kind of the procedures to go through? And eventually, those 3 were added by ordinance 04-26 to the sewer project.
Next thing, which you probably don't have from what I'm hearing, are going to be demerits handed out.
Blame it all on
Can I-
Mr. Perone watching too much television.
Can I just interrupt one sec?
Sure.
Given the number of things we don't have, and I wouldn't be surprised if there's more, is it possible, does this sound totally absurd to say, can this whole thing just be redone instead of us trying to piece this together?
We'll have it all redone for you.
Thank you.
Yes. And I apologize, all I can tell you is that it was sent to administration in one piece. The next thing, we'll just mark it for now and give you a brief explanation. You can make a note on it. Will be C9. That's a letter from Mr. Buzak to Mary Salerso, former township clerk, dated May 3, 2006. And it relates to the public hearing for property owners, to which there is attached an unexecuted copy of the notice of the public hearing, to be held by the sewer, your predecessors, the Sewer Assessment Committee.
We had gotten to the point, based upon the draft report prepared by Mr. Eisenberg, we had the first of the two required open meetings with the public to take input. And saying, someone might say, well, I tied into Dover, here's a letter that says I'm exempt. We needed hard proofs before we would amend or change the report. And that was the last that was dealt with. And then we were still in litigation with sewer line 17, 18, and 19. And then everything from there, that was the last we dealt with the Bowlbyville sewer, from my recollection.
And the last exhibit, which I'm going to label as C10, is a series of documents. The first is a cover sheet to me from Lola Bachok, who was then our tax collector, enclosing a copy of Rob Shear's list and the 2016 extended duplicate list referring to the properties that were on the line. The next is a memo to myself and former Business Administrator Greg Poff from Lola Bachok. It enclosed three sets of documents: Mr. Shear's original listing with comments and changes, the township's listing of properties associated with the assessment, including comments related to certain properties, and third, a copy of the 2016 extended duplicate showing property information for these properties as set by the tax assessor in this year's duplicate, this year presumably referring to 2016. And then we have the attached lists that we were provided. I don't know, Mark, is it necessary to comment on any of this at this time?
Basically, that was just a review of the properties that were, at the time, were on the line. Also showing that there had been a change in the total number of line items that existed over there from the original ordinance 93.5 to the current date of there, since we had multiple properties subdivided, which now are not listed on that ordinance. So you're going back to the original owner that does not exist anymore. So that raises where the last question was in terms of, well, if we went from 65 properties as of 9311 ordinance, we added 3, so we're back to 68 properties, and the current tax map shows 74.
Any questions so far? Hopefully it'll be clear. Now, what we were going to do was, I was going to ask Mark to discuss ordinance 93.5, the one that fixed the total number of properties at 67. It's evident that you have not been provided with a copy of 93.5. So we can do this two ways, and I'll ask the chair for direction on this. Oh, you got it? Oh, great. Okay. I'm very happy at that one. Okay, so Mark, you want to take that away?
That is the base ordinance of from all the meetings of when they wanted to install the sewer system in Bowlbyville. All the properties that they felt would be affected, and again, they did not really look at vacant lots. Past policy was, is if there was a vacant lot on a line, if the property owner came in and said they wanted a lateral, then they would have been assessed. And that contradicts the statute that says you must do it before and after on each property. Doesn't matter whether it's improved or unimproved. Will it or will it not benefit from the installation of centralized sewers? So again, that list, again, I would have to go back to the 93 tax map and say, well, did they really account for all the properties? That's part of the commission's job, to review that ordinance, review the mapping, and review and saying, does this property benefit, does this not? That's part of those notes that were taken in 03, 04, 05, when we had committee meetings with that committee and to discuss what do we want to do about this property? Do we want to add it? Does it benefit, does it not benefit? That was part of the job. So 93.5 established the baseline of all the items that we were going to look at.
I have a question. Are we gonna go back to 93.5 and wipe the slate clean and start fresh, or are we going to try to piece in what they did in 2003, 4, and 5 and figure out what they were thinking and then come up with what we're thinking, or are we just gonna go back to the beginning, or are we piecing this together? Sorry, complicated question.
That's fine. I mean, I think from the perspective of what you're charged to do is to really look at that 93.5 ordinance, look at the current tax map, and look at what is benefiting at the current time, because it's never been confirmed, so therefore, anything that's been added could be added to an ordinance to assess it.
Let me add this too. Mr. Bjork and I have discussed this many times. Saying what Mr. Bjork said in a different way, I think it's the obligation of this committee to fix assessments as to all properties that are properly accessible, which I equate with all properties that are benefited by the sewer line in Rockaway Township. So I think that is the purpose and, if you will, the goal of the committee. Now, certainly, and I think Mark will agree with me on this, everything that has gone before is going to have some basis, evidential or factual, in terms of what you're going to be doing. And in that regard, what I'm going to suggest here, if the chair and the commission approve, is this. Mark has worked very hard to develop lists and maps, which, at least in case of the maps, are, if we reduce them and disseminate them to you through email or regular mail, they're going to be very, very hard to read. And I think, quite frankly, as I did, you're also going to need a guide to do this, okay? The guide is sitting to my right, who hopefully will have more time now that he's slogged through the reassessment.
Still got a day.
One day to go.
Still got a day.
So what I'm going to suggest to the committee is that we certainly have more to do tonight. But what I'm going to suggest is this. I'm going to ask Mark to, I think maybe it's best we do it this way. Mark, when are you going to come up for air after the reassessment?
Monday.
Okay. I'm going to ask all the regular and alternate members of the commission to contact Mark to make an appointment at your mutual convenience to go in and sit down with him and go over the maps and go over what I'm going to call the list or property itemizations that he's prepared. Then at some point after everybody's done that, I'll be in touch with the chair and we'll coordinate the scheduling of our next meeting from that. And then obviously, when that's all been done, we will have copies of these exhibits to mark into evidence for the purpose of the commission's record. Mr. Jekyll.
That method sounds a little resource heavy on Mark's end, because it sounds like you're asking each of us individually to go have him repeat the same thing
Well,
4 times.
That's fair. Mark, you got a preferable way to handle it?
Well, what I can provide to everybody is something I worked on a little while back. Is I kind of did this spreadsheet, and it can be emailed to everybody. It basically took documents from the collector, Mr. Sheard, and the ordinances and the Eisenberg reports, and it kind of gives a synopsis of what is what did we from previous say should benefit and doesn't benefit. So I can certainly give you that.
What should we call that, Mark?
Whatever you want to call it. But that's this right here. And it shows properties listed for each of the ordinances. What did we look at? What did we say yes, no? So that's kind of an overview. It also talks about, are they connected? And are they paying a sewer maintenance, and what year did they start paying the sewer maintenance? So I think that would be beneficial to you. I think what I would do is I will take a map of this size and maybe have one or two maps of this size for the next meeting, which I can depict 93.5, 93.11, 04-26, and then current. So there would be possibly 4 maps that you'd be able to then look at in correspondence with this to understand where the deviation of where we started with 93.5 to where we are today. And break it down into what are the real differences between those, the current and 93.5, that you would have to decide, do they get added to the ordinance? Do they get subtracted from the ordinance? Do they get it, or do they benefit or not benefit? I think that would be an easier way to deal with it. Because then you would have this to start with, and then when you see the maps, you can go through. Now, you do have a reduced version of the map. And it's color, it should be this one that is color coded. That one basically showed 93.5, 93.11, and 93.17, the properties that were referenced in all of those ordinances. So that's a good map to have, because you could I don't know whether you have that in color or not. It should be this one here, and again, I can do it in a color coding. Yeah. And this shows all those ordinances. Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah. But I can try making a copy of this and scanning this in a different version that you can see it better. And then use the current map as your differences.
You know, I see that our assistant administrator here, Dave, can you maybe work with Mark for the next meeting and get us an easel and at least one copy of the map to mail on that easel somehow?
Yeah, Mark, whatever you want.
Yep. I appreciate that. Okay.
And then we can list out those differences based upon those spreadsheets. And again, as I said, I'll provide you with this spreadsheet, which was Mr. Sheard's, of who was connected, not connected. And you'll start to see a correlation of what ones really stand out as the differences that weren't there in 93 to current.
And the colors will be
Yes.
included in whatever we're doing.
Yes.
I think that's a good approach. In fact, I started with a spreadsheet with the 66 original parcels because I wanted to do just exactly that, to get from where they were
When I
to where
sent
we are.
you this, that has all of them across the board.
Excellent.
So you can start with that, and you can highlight what, the ones that kind of stand out as, I put a little note in there as subdivided, or the assessment, or the property includes an additional lot that's assessed together. So when you look at the map, it'll correlate.
That spreadsheet, that new one,
Yes.
is that something, I haven't seen it, of course, but is that something that would list all 72, I think,
Yes.
properties?
Yes.
And status in 93, status in
Yes.
94, status in 04, status now?
Basically, it
Changes.
gives you the block lot address, whether it's connected, the year they started paying sewer maintenance, proof of septic abandonment, construction permit, the date of that permit, whether it was listed on ordinance 93.5, 94.33, 04.26, whether it's in the Eisenberg report, and minor notes of how it's being assessed in terms of in Mr. Eisenberg's report.
How big is that,
So then it seems as if,
It's 3 pages.
no, but I mean, as far as size, is it
Yeah,
more
does
than,
everyone have access to a
No,
sufficiently
that-
large computer?
that's what I was gonna say.
once we've had an opportunity to digest,
I can
That
certainly get you hard copies.
That's what I was just gonna ask you for.
It's not a
Yeah.
problem.
once we've had an opportunity to analyze and digest everything you've had out of that report, get all our questions answered and understand what we have, then it seems as if one possible course of action might be we go property by property
Yep.
and make a determination of
Yep.
well, is it A, B, or C?
Correct.
And we haven't figured out what A, B, or C are yet, but,
Right.
Or D, even if there's three, or there's gonna be four things, four statuses it might be in. One thing that I kinda have a question on, if I were to move into one of those brand-new houses that were just built on North Street, that were just sold for $495,
Give or take, yep.
yeah, and, I'm all hooked up to sewer, I'm fat, dumb, and happy, I think everything is okay, and that was 5 years ago, and now you knock on my door and say, oh, by the way, here's a bill for 20 grand, or whatever the number is, that you need to pay for this, to put the sewer line in. And that owner's gonna go, well, I didn't own the property then, that was in 1995, this is now, I only own the property a couple of years. You say, yeah, but you gotta pay it. So that turns into a court battle where it may end up costing the township more money to defend an assessment of $20,000 than the $20,000 itself is, which may end up being, it's crazy to go there. And
That's a item that John will have to bring up in terms of once we get to that point of how is notice been getting to property owners about open assessments or unconfirmed assessments?
Should have been in the title search.
And that's an issue that John will have to address. But we need to get to that point of exactly, here are the properties, this is what it is. The report can be amended simply, because it's all in Excel. You say, yes, gets it, doesn't get it, and at least then you're at a point where everybody agrees that these are all the properties. Then we can deal with the issue that Mr. Yachafano will have to deal with, and Mr. Perone has done some research on. That will have to be a discussion with the commission. But I think we need to move forward, or it needs to move forward to say, here is the report, then address your concerns of how do we move forward from there. And I think that's, you gotta get step by step.
Let me address that point now, just for the commission. We have determined a long time ago that notice of an actual or potential assessment, or in many cases, the lack of notice, is a legal issue that will need to be confronted as part of the whole process. Our preliminary conclusions are as to how or who should address that issue. Right now, and this opinion may change, because right now what we're trying to do and focused on is getting the presentation of the facts and information that you require in your jobs to you in an organized fashion. Right now, our feeling is, while that may be a relevant part of the ultimate determination to be made, that determination, or any determination of the effect those factors will play, are determined for the council, or something that the council will have to consider after this body has done its job. After looking at all the applicable law, the function of this board is to set an assessment for the properties. As I explained to you the last time we met, once there's a final report from this commission, okay, that report will go to the council, and there will likely be, mechanically, there may be some details as how this is worked out with the council, but the likelihood that is that it will be a joint meeting of this commission and the council, and the purpose of that meeting will be for the council to consider and vote on your final report as a commission with respect to setting the assessments. When this matter is before the council, the horizon or the scope of any determination with respect to assessments is much wider than it is before this commission, okay? We will have, in fact, did address quite some time ago, a confidential report to the council about all factors that may impinge on the assessments once they get before the council. But what I'm suggesting to you now, with a fair degree of certainty, is that, at least for right now, our opinion is that issues such as that which Mr. Jekyll addresses tonight are not for this commission to consider. Which is not to say they won't be considered, but everybody has their job to do, and the body with the broadest tools to deal with the job is the council. So that's where we are on that issue. Okay, so now, the next thing that Mark and I addressed for tonight is, just a note, and Mark, I'll just ask you to affirm this. In 93-5, we were at 67 properties, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay, now the next ordinance that affected things, which is probably not in your package, unless I'm the keel over in surprise, is ordinance 9433. Okay? Ordinance 9433, and I'll ask Mark to confirm this, removed 2 properties, I think Mark referenced that earlier, and brought the list of properties available for assessment down to 65 properties. Is that correct, Mark?
That's correct.
So, Chrissy, we're just going to give 94-3, well, first of all, we're going to call the property list that Mark is going to disseminate, or with Chrissy's help, will disseminate to everybody. We're going to call that C11. And we're going to call ordinance 9433 C12. And we're going to ask Chrissy to dig that up for us and disseminate it.
Chrissy, I'm pretty sure I have a copy of that in my office.
You would be so kind, Mr. Yachafano, as to work with Ms. Clipperton to make sure all these C1s through wherever we are, because
I was actually just going to suggest, John, if you could send, if someone, I don't know if the documents that were originally sent to administration for copying, if I can get the whole packet, the new documents from Mark, I'll go through and I'll label all of the exhibits, C1, C2, that way they're already laid out for the
Okay, 'cause
commissioners.
I had emailed all the stuff to John. John was like, what documents do you have? Here it is. And I was emailing them to John, who then put it together as a whole packet, and then administration was supposed to copy it as an entirety of the packet of what was there. So we can confirm I
Okay.
have all the documents.
Okay.
And the next one I'm going to mark as C13. That would be ordinance 0426, which took us back to, well, that was 67 properties again, right, Mark?
That added 3, so that got us up to 68.
68.
Yes.
Okay. So C13 is
-26.
26, and we are then at 68 properties. Now, Mark, based upon the current tax map, and you and I discussed this, in terms of, does that current tax map contain lots that are benefited that are not on the original ordinance or any of the updates that we've addressed?
Yes.
And how many properties are benefited according to your review
I
of the current?
counted on the tax map 74.
Okay. But is there an issue as to whether or not all of those properties benefit based on property size?
Yes.
And can you explain to the commission what that issue is?
On some of the lots, again, this was something we addressed in the draft report of being substandard to the zone. Also, township-owned property, properties that were subdivided after the fact, so to speak, of even 2004 or up to current, that has been subdivided that are not listed in the original ordinance. Although the mother lot, we'll take, for example, block 10905, lot 1, was subdivided into lots 101 and 102, and the 2 new houses were built there. Okay, we then had across the street from that, I believe it's Mr. Kupes, he subdivided block 10902, lot 10. He has his existing house, and he has approvals to build another house behind it. I believe another one was 10903, lot 7. That was subdivided into lots 701, 702. So again, they're listed as the mother lot on the original, but they're not on the ordinance as those two lots, but they are listed on the tax map in that fashion. As part of my job as assessor, as I get a subdivision, we update the tax maps to reflect those properties that are subdivided.
Question. Are there other lots in this region that have the potential to be subdivided later?
I can only look at what is on this tax map. And again, to look at could something be, that would be a decision of this commission in conjunction with the analysis that is done in looking at what the zone standard is and what has been done in that zone. Could something be subdivided? It's a possibility, and they can be given a enhanced benefit saying there's the possibility of subdivision.
Okay, let me just confuse myself a little bit more. If there's the possibility of subdivision, and we're calculating the cost to divide it amongst all those who've benefited thus far, and we're not allowed to collect more than 100%, do we have to really know how many properties have the potential of subdivision based on current business code or building codes? Or do we just, if they subdivide later, we create an ordinance or recommend an ordinance to say, you gotta pay this later?
No, it's, when it's being confirmed, that's when you have to set the assessment. Once the assessment is set and adopted by the council and is billed, and someone subdivides later, they just pay the connection fee. They are not assessed the benefit, so to speak, as everybody else.
So if somebody has a house on a property, but it's a large lot that has the capacity under code and ordinance to be subdivided later, we have to figure out, do they get hit once or twice?
Correct.
Got it. Thank you.
I have a question.
Yes.
Is there any kind of statute of limitations of how much time after this sewer line was put in you have to assess it before it becomes, it's there, just connect to it?
Not that we're aware of.
That's a problem for the council to figure out, isn't it?
Yeah, or even
Not that I'm aware of. When we did the White Meadow Lake line, Judge Stanton at the time was not happy it took as long as it did, but he still upheld the assessments at that time. That was about 22 years.
So we're right on schedule in terms of Rockaway Township sewer assessments. Yeah. Let me ask Mr. Burke a question in light of the recent increase. Mark, do you feel that, well, first of all, you're going to be using the current tax map to present your information to the commission, am I correct?
That's correct.
Okay. In terms of the question that was just asked pertaining to potential enhanced benefit, do you feel that's a valid factor in determining the assessment of any individual property?
Yes.
Okay. Now, the next question that flows from that is, do you feel it is your function to determine what properties are or may be subject to an enhanced assessment in accordance with the land use ordinance, or do you feel that that should be something done in connection with our planner or somebody from engineering?
Part of it would have to come from a planner's point of view in terms of looking at what has been done, what variances have been granted in that area, and is it likely for those variances to be re-granted? The second part of it is looking at some of the lots that are on the larger size. You really have to know, where is the house? Because if the house is dead center of that 200 by 100 lot, the likelihood of that being subdivided, few and far between. Now, if you have a 200 by 100 foot lot and the house is on one side, could there be a possibility? Maybe. That's something that would have to be looked at and a decision made. Do you go ahead with a little bit higher enhancement or not?
And that part, of course, is your function.
But again, you're making a lot of assumptions at that point in time. So I would limit it to, and again, how many lots are left that could be possibly subdivided, and just look at it from that light. Say, should there or shouldn't there be an extra enhancement, so to speak?
So we
And
would
that-
go to,
that's when-
I was gonna say, we would go to somebody who has that potential to subdivide and say, oh, you're gonna have to pay a little bit more because you may subdivide somewhere down the road.
You have
And
the
they'll look at you,
You
they'll
have
look at you saying, well, why would I do something like that? So it's,
If you look at what they have sold the houses for and what the money they put into them, to have that ability,
Well, what I think the commission is being told here by Mark is that this is a valid factor for him to consider and for him to present to you for your consideration. Now, with the commission's approval, here's what I suggest. This is obviously evidence that you should have. And put simplistically, what I'm referring to is you need to know which properties of those that are benefited by the sewer line may be subject to an enhanced assessment. And echoing Mark's comment about we can't get too prescriptive. In a certain respect, we can only deal with what is now, and in that regard, what I'm talking about is our current land use ordinance, which governs what you can build on what size properties, what conditions apply, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
John, one question.
Yeah.
Are there restrictions about how much sewage we're permitted to create gallonage-wise into the system? And does that in any way alter what can be built or how much build-out you can do?
that we don't.
You can't calculate that.
No,
So
that-
if we don't have any
that's our
gallonage left, that's not part of the calculation.
No.
Okay.
Now, so going on from where I was, what I will do with the commission's approval is this. I will get in touch with our planner, Dave Novak, who will probably have an easy job of interfacing with Mark to provide the commission with this information. We'll get Mr. Novak, and Mark also has, as part of his, what I call regular assessment data, he will be able to tell Mr. Novak where the houses are positioned on the various lots, any outbuildings, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then we will have that information to present to the commission at a later date. Sound good? Okay. Now, so we left off at C13. Mark, the current tax map, you said listed 74 properties?
That's correct.
Okay, so why don't we just indicate that the current tax map is going to be C14? Anything else you, okay.
Questions?
Yeah, okay, we've got a bunch of them. Mr. Chairman, prior to commencement of the meeting tonight, and it's obviously not restricted to the chairman, Mr. Waters provided me with a series of questions which he was interested in getting some response to. So, with your permission, I'll take them one by one? Okay. The first question is, the sewers were activated on March 12th, 1996. Why was no benefit analysis done until 2006?
We finally got the certified cost. Now, that is that's a memo that came from Ms. Ryden as well as Mr. Wood, because based upon the bond, there could be changes on where they're gonna run the line, they could have hit rock, they could have done things. And until all the punch list is done and we have the certified cost, the analysis technically was done prior to, but to do the actual benefit analysis and get the percentage that you would apply, because if you're not exceeding the cost, you gotta have the total cost. So, again, we get the certified cost from the finance officer, in conjunction with the engineer, who signs off and says, yes, all bills have been paid, everything is done. again, when they have cost overruns and they have change orders, all that has to be recalculated against the bond. And that is the engineers then verifying that those costs and those things were actually done. I believe I gave the certified cost. What I got from Mr. Wood was,
A little less, wasn't it?
yeah, I think it was,
92 something, or 986, or?
yeah.
Yeah, the net cost was 900 and something.
The total cost was $933,953.
Yeah.
That was the certified cost to me, and based upon the preliminary report, we subtracted out the $288,000, leaving a net due of benefits to cover, which was $645,957.
The 288,000.
That's with interest, and I believe,
Yeah.
but the cost I was given as certified by the finance officer was the $933,953.
Yes, sir. So can I scratch K off?
So the difference, let me just go over the whole, difference between 933, 953, and 1,375 was interest cost?
I believe so. I don't. That you'd have to talk to the finance officer.
Yeah, we can talk to the CFO if that becomes important. Okay.
Not allowed to go over 100% of the cost, but are we talking about the cost before interest? Or the cost includes interest? You
The way
need
I
that from
have
fin-
done it, for the years I have done it, it's the certified cost from the finance officer. And that was the 933,953. That's the number I go by.
Thank you.
And I'll try to get some confirmation for the commission from our CFO. Mr. Waters, the next question you said was there were originally 58 residences, 6 were vacant, 1 commercial, 1 armory, for a total of 66 properties serviced, but I think we've already covered that. Okay. The third question is, Block 10907, Lot 6 can connect to the existing Dover sewer, and Block 10905, Lot 6, and Block 10906, Lot 6, which are already connected to the RT sewer system, and you ask how, making a revised total of 63 properties. Mark, could you address that?
Well, only 2 were referenced in the follow-up ordinance of the 2 properties that were removed from the original 93-5, and that was the 10905 Lot 5 and 10906 Lot 6. So 10907.6.
See, I'll ask Mark to comment on this because I'm not sure how relevant this is going to be to your determination because, once again, you're going to be determining an assessment based upon what is presently.
No, these were questions I had before we got into the number of revisions
Yeah.
that have taken place since the original
Which is
report.
fine. It's fine.
My understanding is that the Dover line went up that Highland Ave, and that they tied in from the back for that 10907.6.
Okay, the next question pertains to an issue that's often asked, but it reads, 26 Dover properties to be connected, any payment to Rockaway Township. And I think that speaks directly to the nature of the intermunicipal agreement and who is connected to who and paying to whom. Mark, can you address that?
I have no knowledge of anything talking about those 26 Dover properties. And everything that I have in my office or in the files that I have read, and even reading the agreement between doesn't talk about those 26 properties. All's that anything ever talked about was the properties that were in Rockaway Township were going to be assessed. Nothing about the Dover properties that I'm aware of.
And once again, that is the function, but if I can get you some information on that, Mr. Waters, I will. Okay.
How much we think residents should have to pay.
Do we need to consider anything about Dover residents who might tie in later?
I mean, once again, I believe your obligation, in fact, I know your obligation, is going to be to assess based upon the properties that are currently serviced by the line. Okay, next question was, March 2nd, 93, Schedule A to R, Rockaway Township, Dover Agreement, only shows 62 lots, of which 3 are to be excluded, implying 59 RT properties.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Okay. Next, how many properties were originally connected and how many added over the years? I think we've addressed
That
that.
you'll get when you see the spreadsheet and the tax map, you'll see the difference in what those numbers are.
Next question is how many Rockaway Township properties versus Dover properties?
That I would have to talk to Gene or Al about what properties are part of the extensions into Dover, of how many Dover properties.
Next question, 28 Rockaway Township lots to flow to the Dover sewer system, not Bowlbyville. Do you know anything about that, Mark?
No, I don't. That again would be a question for Gene or Al to address.
And we'll try to get you answers on these, although once again, I don't think they're strictly relevant to what this commission is going to be doing.
Gene gave us a map when we did the tour.
Yep.
Gene gave us a map when we did the tour. I actually have it here. And if I understood what he was telling me, there's very few Dover properties that go into our system. On Vale, Edison, and a couple on the corner of Turner and Hillside and Jefferson, 2 properties there, which amount to maybe 10, 6, somewhere around there. That seem right, Jim?
Sounds about right.
Yeah. So now there also might be a few along Route 15 that we didn't count, so,
Yeah, there was a few.
yeah.
There was a few on Route 15?
Right, on Route 15.
And those little roads across 15, there was like 3 houses, 4 houses over there.
Yeah, so it might be more like 15, 20
Yeah.
maybe.
And then the ones right on, and then the ones back. So probably closer to 15.
The next question, Mr. Waters, any reconciliation of properties serviced, Schedule A to the Eisenberg report? I'm not sure what you're asking there.
I can address that, is that the reconciliation is that we took the original ordinance, and again, based upon meetings with that committee and looking at the tax map and looking at the properties, we reconciled, when you saw those notes about, does such and such get a benefit, yes or no? That was the votings of that commission at the time of saying, we want to add that property, make sure there's a benefit, or we looked at it as a commercial property has a little different valuation stream as a residential property. So that was the reconciliation into Mr. Eisenberg's report of looking at the map ordinances to say what's being added.
Okay, the next item is questions if the actual Armory payment was $288,000.
That would be something for finance.
And I believe that's accurate, but I'll confirm that with the CFO. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Next question relates to the total cost as per the Eisenberg report. It lists the total project cost and payment and bonding.
That we're going to go, you will be talking to Lisa. You said you were going to follow up on that.
Yep.
About those additional costs.
That's satisfactory, Mr. Chairman? Okay. And I think item L answers itself.
Right, Mr. Eisenberg deducted the 288, that being said, that was payment automatically off the 933, 953. So that's where, when you look in the report, the remaining benefit is the 645, 957 is the total benefits that needed to be technically covered in terms of the benefits received by the properties in the report.
The next question is, did Dover ever contribute anything to this project? Yeah. Yeah. Next question is, original bonding in 1993 or 1996 was for 20 years. Why has this not been paid off? This was addressed at a council meeting when questions were posed, what I will refer to as the old majority of the council. And I believe they were answered by our CFO. The bond has been, to my knowledge, almost paid off. My recollection is, Manny, if you could refresh my recollection is that there was about $200,000 or so more due on the bond, but any reason for the survival of the bond, I believe, through this point, because I think there's still a balance due on the bond, would be interest. But that's something I'll confirm with the CFO. Again, not strictly relevant to what you're going to be doing, but it's information that might form a backdrop for something.
It was just a curiosity, then. You've got a bond that goes for 20 years, why hadn't it been paid off in 25 years or whatever?
I think one thing that I'm concerned about is when we go through the diligence of what we're doing here and we come up with this answer as to what the dollar amount should be per property, people are going to want to have some of this information as backup. The why, what was the delay, and where did that money come from? And while it may not be in the purview of the commission to address those issues, I think the public is going to want to know, how the hell did we end up here? And I think it's probably going to make this a little bit easier on those who are going to be getting these bills to understand the process and where the money has been, whether it's our responsibility as a commission or whatever we are, or is it the council's responsibility. I think a report should be issued explaining in layman's terms to people so that we are cognizant of the fact that this is going to be a lot for a lot of these people to follow the bouncing ball for 25 years.
All appropriate commentary, but let me caution the commission as to one thing. The responsibility of this commission, and ultimately the responsibility of the council, while broader than this commission's, is still relatively narrow, okay? We believe, and our opinion has been, that Rockaway Township, through the commission process and ultimately through action by the council, has the obligation legally to go forward with the assessment process and ultimately to establish an assessment with respect to these properties. That is based upon the obligations that Rockaway Township took through the approval of the original ordinances, and we have to get to the end of that long and tortuous road. Right now, I would counsel this commission not to bring in too many factors or any factors which are not relevant to the determination that you have to make, which is a very narrow determination. And I will tell the commission with the utmost respect that it is absolutely not the function of this commission to explain or to become the apologist for a process that it had no part in. Certainly, at some point, residents can ask questions of the council, and the council in its discretion may choose to respond to those questions or not, to the best of its ability. But deciding, by way of example, as I commented at our last meeting, deciding what happened and why this, assessment process never was finalized or determining why it was not, is going to be virtually impossible, as is determining all the facts and circumstances
which honestly are no longer relevant to the determinations that you're gonna have to make, okay? The function, as I've told you several times now, of this commission is very narrow. You may certainly consider all of the factors which the subsequent testimony will provide you with in terms of fixing an assessment. But our preliminary and probably our final opinion will be that subjective factors, and there's a host of them in the history of this process, are simply not part of your portfolio and should not be injected into your determinations. So, with that in mind, or at least in my mind, the next question, Mr. Waters, was a reference to Ordinance 93.5, and the question was, is Rockaway Township still pay Dover to transmit Dover sewage? I don't know the answer to that question. Okay. Resolution 9433 is part of the next question. Did our Rockaway Township do an assessment search and lien search? And who was/is the assessment search officer, the tax collector? Question mark. Traditionally, when, in every municipality, when assessment and lien searches are submitted in connection most commonly with the sale of properties, those searches in most municipalities that I'm aware of are done by the tax collector as a matter of the routine functioning of the office. Resolution 9433, okay, we covered that. The last one is new lots, I think it's the last one, yeah. New lots added, subtracted, ownership turnover since 1996. Well, as Mark told you in his testimony, yes, there have been lots added to the line by the ordinance process, and also properties added to the line by reason of subdivision. And I can tell you that from just the preliminary discussions that I've had with Mark over the 2 or 3 years we've been working on this, that there certainly have been subdivisions in the area and many turnovers. I would submit, and I'll ask Mark to say if he agrees or not, I will submit that the only thing that's important for you to know is what properties are currently benefited by the line.
My thought on how many Dover properties are benefiting is the township itself should pay for any construction extension that service the Dover people. The residents in Bolbyville should not pay for servicing of Dover residents. It's just something that'll go into our discussion, I think. There are a couple of things on the back page. I don't think they amount to a lot, except that R comes down to the statute of repose, and do we just not cut to the chase from the beginning and say if this were a simple theft of services that occurred 25 years ago, the statutes run on that, and why do we even care at this point, other than we have a fiduciary responsibility to see what went on or what happened?
Well, I mean, in light of just to address the last part, to see what happened, to investigate that, we diligently did that. And there is a point where, in the language of the old westerns, the trail goes cold. In fact, it goes beyond cold. It goes subterranean. I cannot provide this commission or the council or anyone else with any explanation for why the assessment process was not finalized back in 95, 96, whenever. There's just no information that we've come across. So, with that, Mr. Chairman, was there anything else? Any other questions?
No, sir, I'm satisfied at this point. If I'd waited until tonight, I wouldn't have had to write all this stuff down.
It's quite all right. Any other questions for either myself or Mr. Burek, from any other member of the commission?
So we're getting the spreadsheets,
we're gonna get the spreadsheet rather than having the individualized meetings, and if we have any questions, we can come by and go over them at that point.
And then, Mr. Chairman, what I'll ask you to do is, once everybody gets the spreadsheets and, we get the maps ready for presentation, will you be in touch with the commission members, and then, you and I can collaborate on setting a new meeting?
Absolutely.
He can stop by the office and look at the maps before we do, and if he wants anything changed, we can deal with it
Okay,
that way.
Mr. Chairman, I don't know if you heard what Mr. Burek said. He's invited you to stop by the office and interact with him, look at the maps, and if there's any additional information or changes you want made, Mark will be happy to make them.
Thank you, Mark.
And so this way, once I get the maps prepared, I'll have all the spreadsheets ready to go. You can come by, I'll let you know, you can come by, look at them, tell me how you want them, what you want, and we can put everything together and then can disseminate it to everybody else.
Fantastic, thank you.
One quick question about the spreadsheets. Are we gonna be, I like to use filters and things like that.
For those that are Excel savvy,
I'm
I'll
a
be
geek.
happy to email them, or
Okay.
we'll have John email them.
No, don't do that.
Okay.
Don't do
Or we'll
that.
have Chris email them.
Protected or
Those that are
I'll
not
take-
Excel savvy, I will provide hard copies. Okay.
I note for the record that I saw the clerk ready to jump out of her chair at the thought of me doing anything with a computer, but we'll leave that for another day. Let me state for the record, since it appears we're at the conclusion of this meeting, and repeat the announcement I made at our initial meeting. This is a continuing meeting of the Board of Assessment Commissioners. When we come to the conclusion of the continuing sessions of this meeting, there will be an appropriate public session at which any member of the public may ask questions of the commission or may present any evidence or information they may feel is relevant to the process. Now, one other thing about, just to keep things tidy, in view of what I occasionally refer to as the microscopic scrutiny that everything in Rockaway Township is subject to, we have 3 regular members of the commission and 2 alternates. Everyone may, as they are tonight, be properly seated at the dais, and everyone may, as they have tonight, regardless of their designation as a regular or alternate member of the committee, participate in the discussion. However, when it comes to voting on motions, unless there is an absent member amongst the regular membership of the board, it is only the regular seated members who should make a motion, second a motion, or vote. Just to keep things tight. So, Mr. Chairman, assuming we're done for tonight, I'd ask one of the regular members to make a motion to adjourn and another regular member to second that motion.
Before we do that, in your spare time, could you possibly send us, or Chris, somebody can send us, to save a lot of the time, everybody's time, just a reminder on what we're supposed to be doing, and not say, not that, we're not doing this, not doing this, not doing it, just say, this is it. Just spend your time on this. Don't worry about anything outside of this, because I think it would be a big help to us.
We'll try to do that.
Okay.
What I will tell, and I'll ask Mark to supplement this as he feels is necessary, what I'd really like the members, and this refers to everybody, because we don't know who may or may not be able to make the next regular meeting. I'd like the members to really spend their time studying and making notes for themselves on the Eisenberg report, and to focus on the information you're going to be getting from Mark, both as to the information sheets he's going to provide, which I've called in my notes the property listing, and the map information that you'll be getting. That's going to be, having that as a foundation is going to be very important to our next sessions. Mr. Jekyll? Two alternates. Yeah.
Two alternates and three.
And not to be forgotten, one liaison. So without more, motion to adjourn would be appropriate.
We, discuss the schedule for future meetings before we adjourn.
Do we have something set for?
We had tentatively for the 23rd. Why don't we follow the process with respect? I'd like the commission to follow the process that I outlined. Let's wait till everybody gets the information from Mr. Burek and whatever documents Chrissy and I have to provide. And then I'll coordinate with the chair, who hopefully will communicate with you guys in advance and get us some dates. Mr. Chairman, I'll do it any way you want.
We had tentatively scheduled the next meeting for February 20th. We can follow the same process that we did in order to schedule this meeting. We can I can provide the Board of Commissioners, as well as yourselves, with a few dates that this room is available, and then we can poll everybody, see who's available when and when the next date is best
That
suited to
worked
be.
last time, I think that'll work this time as
Let's
well.
do that.
Okay.
schedule more than two at a time. That was the original discussion.
Yeah.
I think the consensus was not on Valentine's Day.
Yes.
I'm not counting.
Lisa will not be here.
And the ones that are here and are married might get checked.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone.